how do you try to get people to see the future of NFTs when sometimes all we see is an ETH rock or all we see is an ape, and we're just like, I don't get it. I try to tell people the first experience with the internet for most people was an email. I sent my first email in 1989. I was at MIT, and I didn't send one for 3 years later because there was nothing to do there. And I thought that was the internet. Little did I know it would become something greater later. Are we in a similar stage with NFTs, and how can you kind of tell people that they're going to change?
Well, first of all, I mean, I think we're more advanced than that first email you sent in terms of evolution, which is good news, I hope. But the other thing I would say is, one of the things when people look at these JPEGs, and of course that's the big joke within our industry, is like, oh, look, I bought another JPEG for like $1 million. How silly is that, right? But I think what it represents, that ownership, the power of that is really the messaging, the art, the virtual aspect of it is actually really, if you think about it historically, and I'll go into gaming utility shortly after, but really on those things, whether it's a CryptoPunk or Bored Ape, it is no different than buying a Birkin bag or, having a Rolex watch or buying a Ferrari, for instance. And what it does is it's an invitation to a kind of, let's say, membership, a proof of your success, maybe, an inclusion of a club. When you buy a Birkin bag, what are you buying? You're not actually buying the materials it's made of. Yes, maybe you think you can touch and feel it, but actually in reality, 99.9% of that value is entirely virtual. You're buying a story, you're buying a creation of a wonderful, wonderful, construction that might look beautiful in your eyes because it was invented from the mind of that designer, right? When you buy a Picasso, what are you buying? You're not buying the canvas or the material. You're buying Picasso. You're buying his story. You're buying his idea, right? And that is a thing. Now, when you talk about stores of culture, people sometimes buy things historically because they mean something. Oh, maybe the Renaissance period meant something to me. Or when people talk about modern art in China, it means something for Chinese people because modern art is kind of this sort of symbol of where China is today, for instance, right? Or when people buy, for instance, a lot of people bought up old historical relics from the past as a way to sort of preserve their own history and culture. Again, the material isn't valuable, but the story and the power of, those stories that are embedded in there is why you have it. And it means so much to you personally, kind of like that wedding ring as well, right? And again, it doesn't have to mean something to millions of people. It could, right? I mean, the Mona Lisa is an interesting contradiction if you think about it in that context. It's, arguably the most valuable painting in the world, yet it is the most accessible because you can download it on the internet anytime you want. You can go there, snap all sorts of photos you want. It's in every magazine. But you know what? The reason why that original is so valuable is because the whole world knows it, right? And this is the thing when people say, oh, I can just download that JPEG. Well, that's great. But do you own the original? Because the one who does own the original, his piece of art just got more famous because you downloaded it and put it on your screen. Thank you very much. Please keep doing that because my original becomes more valuable. So that is one, I would say, when people sort of are struggling with this thought, right? I think what you're buying, this authenticity, is when you think about everything you buy in your real world, you're actually craving for authenticity as well. Would you buy a fake Nike or real Nike? Why do you want an original Apple versus a fake Apple? Like, why wouldn't you get the fake one that maybe functionally does exactly the same thing? You want the original, right? And that's the same thing. When it comes to sort of NFTs, like, those JPEGs that people sort of, complain about. But the NFTs for utility in terms of gaming, those are more easily understood. But those have much more value, I think, in terms of people who are more, let's say, pragmatic thinking. Because, the world is not all people who think the same way, right? In the same way that, honestly speaking, I struggle with the idea of a Birkin bag. I intellectually understand it, but I can't get myself to buy one because it just doesn't make sense to me, right? Just like how for some of us, we look at diamonds and we say, actually, that's not really valuable, yet people desire it, right? So each to their own, as one would say. But for gaming NFTs, the utility is clear because you can make a clear ROI. One of our sort of F1 Delta Time cars, it's sold on the secondary market for $340,000. It's a lot of money. The headline article wasn't, oh my goodness, who spent $340,000 on a virtual car? How ridiculous is that? The headline was, here's a Lamborghini that costs just the same. Here's the virtual car. Which one makes you money? And this is the thing. We buy cars all the time as status symbols that are depreciating assets. it's something that tells us about who we are. And yet a virtual car for the same amount of money, not only does it last forever, it can generate 20, 30% or more yield a year, right? Well, geez, right? In that sense, it's very logical to be doing this. And that is the reason also why these assets inside games like Axie Infinity or Land and Sandbox, for instance, are becoming valuable, because there's real utility in which you could be earning money from it. And so that's where the gaming NFTs are logical. But again, if you just consider everything you purchase, from the clothes, from the assets you purchase yourself, what percentage of that decision making came from the actual sort of material value, the physical value? And the chances are very little of it, probably.